How's it going, YouTube? Just wanted to start off with a video doing a paddle review. Recently, I've transitioned from hitting with this, the Gearbox Pro Ultimate, which is Gearbox's latest paddle, and I've transitioned to hitting what some might consider a downgrade, but it's been perfect for my game, and that's the ProXR Signature Series 13mm. As you can see, been hitting a lot with it. I got a nice collection of pickleball dust on there, which I can use my paddle eraser to get rid of. But it's kind of a testament to how much grit there is on the ProXR, and I think that's been the defining feature for why it's been so much better for my game. I played my first tournament in October, and my partner and I won gold at the tournament, and I was playing with this paddle, the Gearbox. But I noticed after watching the tape, a lot of my shots were going straight into the net because if I was hitting it anywhere that wasn't in kind of this small sweet spot, the shots would just feel dead. And what people mean when they say they feel dead is the shots just don't bounce off the surface properly. If normally the ball's bouncing, like let's say this high from the paddle with a gentle touch, when it lands here, it seems like the ball only really gets like that much space. So a lot of my dinks at the net, they were kind of unsuccessful and going straight into the net or even lower. Obviously, this paddle is well known for having a lot of power. It's a bit less power than the Pro Power Elongated, but that made drives feel really nice. Coming from tennis, I feel like the elongated shape of this paddle and the way that they set up their technology beneath the surface of the carbon fiber is really nice, and it really felt like a tennis racket in some ways, where the strings would be gripping onto the ball and causing it to spin and have a lot of power. A lot of people have noted that Gearbox has a bit of a trampoline effect, but for whatever reason, you don't really hear too much about ProXR. I only knew about them because of my favorite pro. Shout out to Zay Navratil and Jack Monroe. And they're with Team ProXR. But yeah, a friend of mine let me borrow it, his ProXR Signature 13, and I played with it a couple of times and really loved it. I thought that it was just going to be a case of new car smell, where you get a new paddle and all of a sudden you're playing your best pickleball ever, and then a couple of days down the line you go back to the park, you're hitting and you're doing everything and it's all going out or into the net. But I never really had that with this paddle. Something about the ProXR Signature 13, yeah, it really helps me to dial in my game. There's a lot of grit, so that causes a lot of my balls to have more shape, and they kind of dip back into the court when with the Gearbox they might have just kept flying to the back fence. I wasn't really a thin paddle preferrer before. I tried out the Volair Mach 1 Forza 14mm, the Kyle Yates edition, and it just felt like hitting with a wooden board, kind of. So I thought that, these thinner paddles, thinner paddle cores weren't for me. So if you can do it side by side there, it's funny because the Gearbox actually looks thinner, but it's supposed to be a 16mm, and this is a 13mm, but it's got the, yes, it has the edge guard, whereas the Gearbox is edgeless, so that's another difference. But yeah, hitting with this 13mm, it feels like nothing I've ever felt. It actually, I think because of the grit, maybe it feels like the ball's kind of dwelling on the surface a little bit longer. So what that basically means is that the ball's coming, and usually, you imagine like the ball comes and then it hits off the paddle and goes right back. When people say dwell time, there's a kind of tactile experience where you hit the ball and then it feels like the ball is kind of stuck here for like a half second, and then it shoots back out after you swing through. And so with this paddle, even though it's got this thinner core, it really feels like the ball is staying with me for a little bit and allowing me to apply some more topspin on my shots, which gives it more shape. So yeah, honestly, I guess like this is a short spiel on gear. Like obviously, I think retail pricing wise, this goes for $275, and on the website this goes for $209. The ProXR website. So, you know, you might think like $70 is a significant amount, or you might think it's not. You might think that maybe in pickleball there's diminishing returns, and as long as you're not playing with an Amazon paddle, you should be fine. I think both cases are probably right. But I think if you're a gearhead and you're playing pickleball, it's worth exploring some of these other options that don't get covered as much. Like I've been looking at weeks and weeks of content on the ProXR paddle to see if anyone else feels the same way that I did when I started hitting with it. But it turns out there just isn't that much interest. People are saying that, you know, there are better options out there, and maybe objectively there are, right? But I think that it's important to note that we do have preferences for our own games as pickleball players. I really can't see myself hitting with anything else, although I say that, and I've potentially got a Paddle Tech TKO CX 12.7 mil coming in soon. But I do feel that this is a paddle where I can feel kind of comfortable with trying to improve my game alongside the paddle and feel like the paddle is not what's holding me back. Actually, it's me. Just last night, again, been consuming a lot of pickleball content, as many of us do when we get into the game. And I was kind of watching some tips from Zane on hitting counters instead of just blocking back shots. So the title of the video was something like how to beat bangers or something, or bangers hate this, something like that. But he was basically saying that, you know, when you're playing against bangers or people who drive the ball, who hit the ball really hard, that, you know, what you should do instead of just like the natural instinct, which is to push block it back. If you play tennis, you're kind of not, you're taught to not take full swings with the paddle or with the racket. Now I'm a pickleball player. But you're taught to kind of just block it back, maybe even slice chop it, right? That kind of doesn't work the same way in pickleball. If you just do that, Zane's claim was that they're just going to feel confident driving it back at you over and over and over, and that you make yourself kind of set up to be attacked, right? And so his solution to that was practice working on those counters, right? And what a counter is if someone hits a speed up at you or a drive at you, instead of just blocking it back, you're taking a more aggressive approach and you're swinging and hitting that ball back. And so I was working on that, got some really fun hand fights with this guy named Alex that I just met at the pickleball court yesterday. And we were kind of like playing at similar speed, so our hand fights were really like, it felt like we were in the PPA, obviously like at a way lower level. And so I think that what's important in kind of the journey of playing pickleball is trying to find a racket, or geez, I'm really in between the two worlds here. Trying to find a paddle where you can get the feeling that it's not what's holding you back, right? And I think settling with that, working on how to improve your game from there. So right now, like, I feel like this paddle is a good spot for me. It's not the reason why my dinks aren't going over. It's not the reason why I'm overhitting some of my shots. And so, I'd say that finding the paddle that fits you, the one that feels like it's not holding you back, and then working on the rest of your game. So for me, I'm working on my counters, working on my two-hand backhand. That's kind of a way to avoid the kind of paddle gear addiction, and to remind yourself that, you know, part of the game is kind of gear related, but 75% of the game depends on you and your ability to get better, your ability to change and adapt in the middle of the game, and your ability to kind of work on things as you continue to play, right? We don't want to play aimlessly, but we do want to be able to play in a way where we're focusing on what we need to improve. Obviously, the paddle is the quickest fix. You just shell out some bucks for it, and you're ready to go and make improvements that way. But the hard part of getting better at the game is getting better at our own skills and getting better at our instincts and the hard skills like drops, dinks, counters, things like that. Those are things that are really going to matter when it comes to improving on this pickleball journey. So, yeah, this is my first shot at making a video. I've followed some tips from Kyle Munoz to work on some lighting. I turned off all the lights basically in my room. I cleaned up a bit. You just see Doug here hanging out with me, and maybe he'll be a mainstay in some of these videos. And yeah, that's it. Thanks so much for tuning in and watching. I hope to make some practical pickleball content to address the relevant issues for your everyday rec player from my perspective, right? And so this channel is going to be filled with tips coming from physical recovery, like taking care of your knees. I have a video in mind for a really quick and easy daily exercise that you can do to protect your knees from the kind of grind of pickleball, to strategy stuff that's on the court. A lot of times there's plenty of strategy content out there from Tanner, from that pickleball guy, from some of the pros even, right? I don't claim to be a better pickleball player than those guys, but from the perspective of a rec player, I think it's going to be, interesting to have my perspective, see what goes on the courts and the kinds of things that we see at the rec level. So yeah, this is Pickle Practical. Welcome to the channel.